Like we're gonna meet. It's gonna be beautiful. It's gonna be glorious. We're gonna kiss a lot. I'm gonna kiss him right in the mouth. Okay. And then I'm going to put him up for a Nobel Peace Prize. And then he's going to put me up for a Nobel Peace Prize. And then we're going to, here's arc. That's right. We're going to kiss.
Have any question?
Trump as an eyebrow response to possible Russian hack of U.S. court systems. Hold on.
Yes, please.
Hi, sir. There's new reporting that the Russians have hacked into some computer systems that manage U.S. federal court documents. I wonder if you've seen this reporting and if you plan to bring it up with Putin when you see him later in the week.
I guess I could. Are you surprised? You know, are you surprised? They hack in. That's what they do. They're good at it. We're good at it. We're actually better at it. But no, I have heard about it. I have heard about it. Mr. President. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. You mentioned congressional Democrats.
A bold new Russian offensive. This video circulating online showing an explosion and plumes of smoke as Russia advances into a Ukrainian stronghold in the east. This comes as officials confirm that today Ukrainian President Zelenskyy and European allies will meet virtually with President Trump and Vice President Vance, 2 days before Trump's face-to-face meeting with Vladimir Putin in Alaska, which the White House is now calling simply a listening exercise.
The president is agreeing to this meeting at the request of President Putin. And the goal of this meeting for the president is to walk away with a better understanding of how we can end this war.
Trump himself downplaying expectations as well.
I think it'll be good, but it might be bad. Probably in the first 2 minutes, I'll know exactly whether or not a deal can be made.
Trump had wanted a...
I'll take one look at him. And let me tell you, when I put my eyes on that beautiful man, when I see him, I'll say, Vladipo, I'll take one look at him and I'll know whether he's gonna deal or not deal. I'll tell him, Vladdy, stop. And he'll stop. But I'll tell him, Vladdy, don't stop, as he thrusts. Because I love him. I am the apple of his eye. And he is the apple of my eye. There's one thing he likes more than Ukraine, and that is me.
Trilateral meeting that included Zelenskyy, but Putin rejected that.
Putin doesn't want Zelenskyy around that table because that would reveal that he actually doesn't want to negotiate. And he just wants to have a picture with President Trump and also postpone sanctions.
Photo ops are not always successful. In the president's first term, his Hanoi summit with North Korea's Kim Jong-un ended abruptly with no progress in stopping Kim's nuclear programs. And for this upcoming meeting with Putin, even if there is progress, the president suggests any path to peace will require Ukraine to give up territory, something President Zelenskyy has flatly said will not happen without security guarantees. And Zelenskyy saying this morning that there is no sign that the Russians are preparing to end the war, and all countries that want peace should force Russia to make peace. Robin?
We'll see what happens there. All right, Martha, our thanks to you.
Will Russia face any consequences if Vladimir Putin does not agree to stop the war after your meeting on Friday?
Yes, they will. Yeah.
Whenever people say, what will it be? He goes, I won't tell you. It's a secret. I won't tell you. I'll keep my secrets. What is this? Okay, stop saying
that.
There will be consequences.
Sanctions, tariffs?
There will be. I don't have to say. There will be very severe consequences.
I don't have to say, but there will be consequences.
Consequences, yes. Go ahead, please. In the back? Yeah, please.
Yes, Mr. President, how were your calls this morning with European leaders, and was it your call not to invite President Zelenskyy to your meeting with Putin?
No, just the opposite. No. We had a very good call. He was on the call. President Zelenskyy was on the call. I would rate it a 10, very, very friendly. I know the leaders because I was at NATO, as you know. I took it from 2% to 5%, 2% that wasn't paid, 5% that is paid, which is trillions of dollars in defense capability. No, it was always going to be, I was going to meet with President Putin, and then after that, I'm going to call the leaders and President Zelenskyy. I'm going to call President Zelenskyy, and then I'll call, probably in that order, the leaders. there's a very good chance that we're going to have a second meeting, which will be more productive than the first, because the first is I'm going to find out where we are and what we're doing. Again, this is Biden's war. This isn't my war. He got us into this.
You are the president of the United States of America. It's been 8 months. This is your 8th month into the presidency. It doesn't work that way. Why the would anybody still entertain it? Like, this is so stupid. You ran on ending it day one. He said, I'm going to one frame it. I'm going to one tap it. Me and Vladdy Poo, we go way back. I'm going to one tap it, one frame. Nobel Peace Prize for me, please. Bye-bye. Why did you say that then? You're not a private citizen. You're the president. It's your war now, okay? I think he was lying. Nah, Trump would never. Not my Trumpy Poo. What? He would never lie, dude. Remember when he said he was going to end the war? He was going to end the war in Gaza too. No more war. I'm going to end it. I'm going to end the wars in the Middle East. No new wars. Oops, bombed Iran. That was good, though. Or when he said no cuts to Medicaid, that was fun because there's 8 no cuts to Medicaid. That was cool. What has he done? What has he done for you lately? Nothing. This is why I wish I had more hogs. Like, I'm low key. Like, look, I don't like the debate bro sphere and the debate bro style content, but I genuinely do miss the hogs. Nowadays, I feel like the most people that I duke it out with that call me a terrorist, you know, HasanAbi, are pro-Israel dick-riding bots that happen to be of the liberal variety. I need me like a real Trumpian hog. I'm hogless. I want to talk to the Trumpian hogs that come in here to be like, nah, Trump is the president, baby. Like, it sucks. It sucks that they're not around anymore. Like, they've just, I don't know. Like, do I have to wait for Asmongold to be done with his stream so that they come in here and start talking about Trump is your president, bitch? So I can talk to them directly to be like, hey, man, where my hog gone? All my hog gone. Want us to cosplay? No, it's cringe. Yeah, it's just, I think part of it is because Trump is not necessarily as popular as he once was. I guess, like, if you're under the age of, like, 35, you're you know, like, flies to a shit, slam to the Asmongold stream. So you don't even entertain the good fight of kicking some libtard ass. You know what I mean?
And it should have never happened. This war would have never happened if I were president. But it is what it is, and I'm here to fix it. And I'm here to stop 6,000, 7,000 people last week. 7,213 people last week were killed, mostly soldiers. But missiles being lobbed into towns don't exactly help either. But mostly soldiers. And Ukrainian and Russian. They're not American soldiers, but you know, if we can save a lot of lives, it would be a great thing. I've stopped 5 wars in the last 6 months, and on top of that, we wiped out the nuclear capability of Iran, obliterated it. It's turned out to be a correct word, by the way, because you know some of the press said, well, maybe it wasn't obliteration. It was obliteration, and we're going to meet with. I would say the second meeting, if the first one goes okay, we'll have a quick second one. I would like to do it almost immediately, and we'll have a quick second meeting between President Putin and President Zelenskyy and myself if they'd like to have me there. And that would be a meeting where maybe it could be absolutely work. But the first meeting will not work that out. Certain great things can be gained in the first. It's going to be a very important meeting, but it's setting the table for the second meeting. I think the second meeting, if the second meeting takes place, now there may be no second meeting because if I feel that it's not appropriate to have it because I didn't get the answers that we have to have.
I'm not kidding when I say this. He feels kind of jovial. Maybe I'm being too parasocial here, but I see a new side of Trump after like a month of constantly having to deal with like the Jeffrey Epstein stuff. And I legitimately think it's because he's excited to see Vladimir Putin in person. I don't know. This is my most like blue anon Russiagate adjacent theory. And I know I don't entertain that stuff usually, but like he is just communicating so much his genuine admiration for Vladimir Putin, and it's hard not to point it out. Like, we're gonna meet. It's gonna be beautiful. It's gonna be glorious. We're gonna kiss a lot. I'm gonna kiss him right in the mouth, okay? And then I'm gonna put him up for a Nobel Peace Prize, and then he's gonna put me up for a Nobel Peace Prize, and then we're gonna here's arc. That's right. We're gonna kiss so hard and sloppy. Won't kiss El Disney. No. When he says, Mr. President, I want not to kiss him.
European leaders and Volodymyr Zelenskyy have held a crucial call with President Donald Trump ahead of his meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Friday.
Russiagate was silly, but Trump genuinely likes Putin. It's not some blackmail thing. He just really likes him. No, I know. That's my assessment of the situation. I think he legitimately has. No, he likes strong men, okay? And I don't mean that in like a gay way, okay? I'm saying like he likes authoritarian strong men. He's fascinated by them. He wants to be like them. He wants to run the country in the same way because he loves that like admiration and praise, whether forced or not, doesn't matter, right? He likes popular politicians in general as well. And I think he does have a soft spot, like a special place in his heart for Vladimir Putin. The only guy that fits that profile that Trump actively despises is Maduro. Outside of Maduro, I don't think there's a single world leader, regardless of their ideological position, that Donald Trump doesn't actually enjoy the company of, and actively praise even. Like, obviously, he liked AMLO. He actually thought AMLO was chill. Okay? And he likes Claudia Sheinbaum. He regularly says Claudia Sheinbaum is great. Brilliant. So, like, even on the front where, their ideological background, their ideological conviction doesn't matter. Like, that's what I'm always pointing to. He doesn't like Lula that much, I don't think. And I that's because he loved Jair Bolsonaro, and Lula is obviously putting him in the Lulag. But that's the reason why he hates Lula. I mean, I mentioned this already yesterday. Like, there is no reason to actually ride. There is no reason to actually ride for Viktor Orban. He offers nothing, okay? He offers nothing. There is more of a reason to be fascinated with, like, Kim Jong-un than there is to be down with Viktor Orban. The only reason why you like Viktor Orban is because you like authoritarian strongmen who are right-wing. That's it. Like, that is the quality that he actually appreciates. He hates Khamenei? No, that's not even true. I don't even think he hates Khamenei. He has literally also offered, he's even offered, like, not necessarily like, that's his enemy, right? That's his foreign enemy. But, like, he has actually said things about him that are more respectful. Yeah, he said that about the Ansar Allah movement. He said that about the Ansar Allah movement. He said they're good fighters. They're great fighters. Whenever he talks about Khamenei or the Iranian government, he regularly will say, well, they have such strong support or shit like that. Like, he will present, like I said, he will present even foreign adversaries as positive. You don't know too much about Orban then? No, I'm just saying, like, Orban is just simply a right-wing charlatan. And that's the reason why Trump likes him. Do you see what I mean? Because he offers nothing outside of being a forward operating base for, like, right-wing culture war issues. Like, he doesn't have any motion outside of, like, being a CPAC attendee. Do you see what I mean? That's it.
Ukrainian leader says he told the US president that President Putin is bluffing and he is still trying to push forward in the war. Mr. Zelenskyy also said he hoped a ceasefire would be the main topic of discussion for the leaders in Alaska. It comes after the French President Emmanuel Macron said Donald Trump is hoping to come away with a ceasefire after his meeting with his Russian counterpart.
We also discussed the situation at the front line on the battlefield. I told the US president and all our European colleagues that Putin is bluffing. He is trying to push forward along the whole front. And Putin is also bluffing, saying that he doesn't care about the sanctions and that they're not working. In reality, the sanctions are very effective and they're hurting the Russian military economy. It's right, Russia does have much more artillery and weapons, but Russia has 3 times as many losses. This is a fact. I told my colleagues and the United States President and my European friends that Putin doesn't want peace. He wants to occupy our country, and we all understand this, that Putin will not be able to cheat anybody, and we need American and European sanctions. And together, our union, our partnership can really stop Putin's war. We discussed the meeting on Alaska, and we hope that the central theme will be a ceasefire. The United States President said this several times. He proposed to me that after the meeting in Alaska, we'll have a contact and that we will discuss all the results if they are achieved, and we will define our future steps. We will have a meeting of the Coalition for Peace and Security, and we're working on that.
We made various things clear for the negotiations. We made it clear that Ukraine has to be at the table if there are any follow-up meetings. We want to have negotiations in the right order. A ceasefire has to be the beginning of it. Important elements should then be agreed in the framework agreement. And thirdly, Ukraine is willing to discuss territorial questions, but then the contact line needs to be the starting point, and legal recognition of Russian-occupied territory is not part of discussion. Borders might not be changed through violence. If in Alaska there's no movement on the Russian side, then the US and the Europeans need to increase the pressure. President Trump knows his position.
Good luck to the UK for increasing the pressure. Like, you can't on the one hand run around and be like, Trump is daddy, and then on the other hand be like, well, we got to increase pressure. It's like, just say it. Just say the truth, man. You're at his mercy, and it's no different than Ukraine in and of itself. Either I see some motion and some backbone from European leaders on this issue or any other number of different issues, okay? Especially as it pertains to like America actively undermining European sovereignty with regular frequency in broad daylight, okay? Now, I know this guy's not the UK. He mentioned the UK. He said he's talking for the rest of the EU, and he's also saying the US and UK also have to apply pressure. Why does he have to spell out UK separately? Because the UK did Brexit, okay? Stop, chatters. Jesus Christ. I'm responding to what he said. I know who MERS is. Jesus Christ. My point is, there is, like, these guys are not operating independently. They're not operating independently at all. And they're openly saying that they're not operating independently at all. But then they turn around and act as though they are a separate entity that could just somehow speak out against Donald Trump.
Shares them largely.
I wish they would.
Well, our Europe correspondent Siobhan Robbins is in Berlin for us, and our political correspondent Tamara Cohen is in Westminster. Siobhan, let's come to you first, where we've just seen those clips from that press conference by German Chancellor Merz and President Zelenskyy. Clearly, European leaders felt this summit had to go ahead. They needed to let Donald Trump know what they were hoping for, and they announced 5 principles.
Yes, and we've been saying ahead of these virtual meetings that this is crucial because many see this as potentially the final opportunity for both Ukraine and its European allies to set out its stall again to Donald Trump and J.D. Vance to say these are our red lines, you mustn't cross these, you mustn't get schmoozed or distracted or basically run rings around by President Putin. Obviously not put in those terms, they'll have put it in the most polite terms, but that's really what they were saying. And we heard from Friedrich Merz and Zelenskyy that actually Donald Trump, for most of it, seemed to be on the same page as his European counterparts. So things that they went forward to say were key are, for example, that a ceasefire has to be the start.
It's wild that we're at the mercy of one singular person. Like, there is no, like, in the past, at least with Brandon, there were a lot of awful decisions that were made even as it pertains to how to deal with Russia. But like, at least there were advisors that had some kind of understanding of the situation. They made the wrong assessment, or they had a cynical, nefarious, continue the bloodshed, whatever, right? But like with Donald Trump, you literally are at the mercy of like one singular person. I'm saying, obviously, like it's up to Putin first and foremost, but like, you know, that's again, another singular entity here that gets to command the entire nation. And the expectation in like liberal capitalist democracies is not is not supposed to be, the expectation of liberal capitalist democracies is not supposed to be that like one guy gets to make these decisions and then the rest of the world can't do anything and they can't stop anything. They can't have any input whatsoever. Surely Brandon was just slightly demented and his advisors weren't running the government without him. Surely, no, that's what I'm saying. But most presidents, demented or not, still rely on knowledgeable parties in their advisors committee. Like they have advisors around them at all times because they're not expecting, no one man is expected to know the appropriate answers. The president basically plays the role of like clicking the button after analysts offer like numerous opinions, okay? Whereas in this circumstance, it's just like, I don't think Trump's listening to anybody. He's just like personally playing with the lives of so many people. Part of that is, yes, you're right, the consultant class overreached, did genocide, and then lost to Trump, for sure. And now Trump is also continuing that genocide while also simultaneously making the world leaders genuflect.
Point. What they don't want to happen on Friday is for Trump to announce that he's done some sort of joint declaration with Putin, for example, on an economic basis, which basically rewards Putin, and then there's no meaningful steps towards a ceasefire. They say a ceasefire has to be the first step in this. They also say in terms of future peace talks, Ukraine has to be at the table. They wanted Ukraine at the table for this meeting on Friday. That isn't changing. So they've made it clear that going forward, they have to be. This meeting, you know, they just have to sort of suck that up, to be honest. And then the other things that they've said is that they need to ensure that the security of Europe and Ukraine is guaranteed from this Alaska meeting. And I think that really underlines the fact that we've heard time and again over the last 12 to 24 months that there are warnings now that in the next 5 years, President Putin could be able, with his military, to strike a NATO country. For the last 3 years, essentially, European partners believe that Ukraine has been keeping the rest of Europe safe. They do not want this meeting to be a point where Ukraine is undermined, weakened, and then the rest of Europe is at risk because of that. So they're making all of that really clear. I think the one thing that I picked up that was really interesting is I've seen President Zelenskyy come to this chancellery numerous times now. I saw him just in the end of May, and his body language this time was different. He seemed much more stressed, much more serious. Last time he was very jovial, he was very warm. This time, clearly very frustrated that this summit is even going ahead, and really making the point that he does not believe that President Putin has any inclination to make a peace deal. He said in his answers that he believes that President Putin's main aim is to occupy the whole of Ukraine.
Siobhan, live from Berlin, thank you.
European leaders are working very hard to impress on President Trump the importance of a meaningful negotiation when he meets President.
He does not give up. He is locked in. Okay? There's only one man whose opinion he cares about. Is not Zelenskyy, is not MERS, is not any number of different European leaders. It's Vladimir Putin. He does not give a shit about anybody else, dude.
Putin. The question is, are the Europeans influential? What power do they really have to influence American decision-making? In reality, the Europeans have quite a lot of power to affect the outcome of the result of the summit, if not the summit itself, because the Europeans have the ability to help Ukraine keep on fighting. If Ukraine rejects what comes out of this summit in Alaska, with European help, the Ukrainians can carry on fighting, even if the Americans withdraw all of their support. The Europeans have put in more than twice as much now to what the Americans have put into helping Ukraine. The Americans have put in about $120 billion since 2022. The Europeans have put in $260 billion since that time. And Ukraine produces about 40% of its weapons itself. It gets another 40% from Europe, and only 20% of its weapons now, generally speaking, are from the United States. So the Europeans have some influence in what happens next, because Ukraine does have the option, if it chooses, to carry on fighting instead of accepting a completely unjust peace that would actually be imposed on them and take a fair chunk of their territory away. On the other hand, the Europeans shouldn't overstate the influence that they've got, because although the Europeans are now providing 40% of the weapons that Ukraine is providing 20%, that 20%.
This is a position the media held under Biden. Now it just seems like bad journalism. The reason why it feels like bad journalism now is because it doesn't fit the same role. For America's purpose in Ukraine, clearly the Biden administration, regardless of whatever America's actual interest was in Ukraine, clearly the Biden administration and the European leaders were aligned in the continuation, right? And the way that they present it is like a permanent defense of Ukraine, maybe even like possibly floating NATO admission into Ukraine. Now everybody fucking understands that it's gone. Like that is done. Because Donald Trump never, for all of his faults and failures, Donald Trump will be honestly dishonest. What I mean by that is he will say the quiet part out loud. He'll be like, who the f do you think you are? We control the cards. I hold the cards. You don't hold any of the cards. So when you just kind of give the game away, and you openly say it how it is, and also simultaneously do this like weird thing with Vladimir Putin, all of the outside pressure and all of the outside watchers, like the European leaders are sitting on the cuck chair. Okay, it's graphic to explain, but you got Zelenskyy getting double teamed by Trump and Vladimir Putin, and every European leader is sitting on the cuck chair watching. And they're like, oh, don't do it. Don't do it. Please. But they're watching. They can't do anything.
Are the weapons that Ukraine most needs in the most sophisticated categories. And the United States also provides intelligence help. And that's really important in terms of running the battlefield, in targeting help. And never underestimate the importance of Starlink, Elon Musk's system that allows the Ukrainians to operate on the battlefield very, very efficiently. If Elon Musk chose to turn off that system, as he has in the past, he denies it, but we know that he has for short periods, then the Ukrainians are in a much more difficult position to try to resist Russian attacks, which are overwhelming in their size and numbers of troops that they can put into it. So the Europeans shouldn't overstate what they can do, but they can actually do quite a lot to keep the Ukrainians going. And that must be a benefit to Zelenskyy, to know that the major European powers have still got his back. They're still supporting him. They still mean it when they say they'll do whatever it takes.
Volodymyr Zelenskyy and European leaders, including Sir Keir Starmer, will speak to Donald Trump in an emergency summit later today.
The very same defensive allegiance that I have openly stated is a protection racket, also known as NATO, that has played a significant role in undermining socialist movements in Western Europe, and also has played a formative role in advancing American interests around the world, is now a weight around the neck of Europe that wants, out of very real fears and also out of like anti-communist resentment, even though Russia is not a communist country at all, they have very real fears of Russian incursion into further and further European territory. But they can't do anything about it because they have no independence. They can't move independently because all the weapons they have are American weapons, number one. And number two, NATO is the reason you're alive today, buddy? That's really funny. You're talking to a Turkish man, okay? You're talking to a Turkish socialist man. NATO is the reason why my country has no fucking existing left-wing movement, okay? You can draw a direct line to the Erdogan regime from American intervention with the CIA and NATO. And that's bad. How? Do you like Donald Trump? Did we find a hog? He's decent. Oh, okay. Yeah, you think Donald Trump is decent. Fucking idiot. Anyway, please stick around. Yeah, no, Donald Trump is the American version of Recep Tayyip Erdogan. And he's awful. He's not decent at all. And he's so awful that even a fucking dumb fuck like yourself has to make it seem like you have a wishy-washy opinion on him nowadays. Okay? Donald Trump respects landlord rights. Are you a landlord? Are you a landlord chatter? Are you lording over land? In any case, like I said, you can draw a direct line from American intervention all the way, American intervention in NATO all the way to Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who is, of course, the Turkish version of Donald Trump. So, you know, that's what NATO brought to my other country.
The Ukrainian president will be in Berlin for the virtual meeting, joining the German chancellor, who is hosting the talks. It comes ahead of the US president's meeting with Vladimir Putin in Alaska on Friday, amid concerns that the two leaders will forge the makings of a peace deal without input from Ukraine.
It's impossible to talk about Ukraine without Ukraine, and no one will accept that. So the conversation between Putin and Trump may be important for their bilateral track, but they cannot agree on anything about Ukraine without us.
Well, Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz will host the virtual meeting in Berlin at 1 o'clock this afternoon. Sir Keir Starmer joining alongside the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, plus Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Also expected to take part France's Emmanuel Macron and the NATO General Secretary Mark Rutte. Then at 2, European leaders will hold a call with both Trump and his deputy J.D. Vance as the meeting between the US president and Russia's Vladimir Putin edges closer. The third and final meeting is scheduled for today. It will be chaired by Sir Keir. He will speak to leaders of the so-called Coalition of the Willing, a group of countries working on plans to support Ukraine in the event of a ceasefire. Well, let's bring in our security and defence analyst, Professor Michael Clark. Michael, how much legitimately do you think the Europeans can stand to influence the situation?
Well, they have the influence of being able to say that if this deal completely ignores Ukraine's interests, then Ukraine won't agree to it and the war will go on, whether you like it or not. So it won't be a successful peace arrangement that President Trump is trying to pursue. And what it is that the Europeans are particularly concerned about is the idea of territorial swaps that would be completely unacceptable to Ukraine. And if you look at the map of Ukraine, I mean, you can talk about lots of areas up in the north, minor swaps at Sumy and Kharkiv, the problem of Crimea, which is effectively off the table, something in the south maybe. But what really matters is this, the Donbass, the area of the Donbass, the area of Donetsk, with Donbass is Luhansk and Donetsk. And this area of Donetsk is not conquered by the Russians. The Ukrainians are holding it. And the briefing is that Putin is demanding that the Ukrainians withdraw from that before he will agree to a ceasefire. And that is completely and utterly unacceptable to be clear in the last 24 hours, because they've got a very heavily fortified strip of territory here between the 4 cities from Slavyansk through to Kostiantynivka. And if they give up that sort of fortress belt, it'll be much harder for the Ukrainians to prevent the Russians eventually moving further westwards towards the Dnieper River. And so this is their best last line of defense in eastern Ukraine. If they give that up, then the Russians potentially could move much further westwards, as Ukrainians believe they will. Whatever the Russians promise, they will eventually try to move into other parts of Ukraine. And so this is the map, the potential map in a way that really worries the Europeans and Zelenskyy, and they'll be putting pressure.
Do you think anything is going to come out of these peace talks other than a ceasefire? I don't even know if there's going to be a ceasefire. Ukrainians don't believe that there's going to be a ceasefire. They want one. Overwhelming majority of Ukrainians now they favor a ceasefire rather than continued war. And yet also majorities of Ukrainians also believe that there won't be a ceasefire. And part of the reason, or a big part of the reason why there won't be a ceasefire is because Vladimir Putin doesn't want a fucking ceasefire. So this is a negotiation that is almost entirely in the hands of Vladimir Putin. Like, there's only one guy who can just say, all right, we're done. It's a ceasefire. And Donald Trump, I'm not even going to give him credit for this, has literally rolled out the red carpet. You might say they have very little points of leverage because they've exhausted all options in terms of like the nuclear level of sanctions that were applied to Russia and all this stuff, which there's truth to that sentiment. And on top of that, like, the battle lines are drawn in the ways that they are, and Vladimir Putin has the upper hand when it comes to how to continue engaging in this war, and therefore he holds all the cards. And part of that assessment, paired up with Donald Trump's like weird love for Vladimir Putin, has basically caused the ceasefire conversation to take place in a way where not only is he undermining the Ukrainian side, which is our proxies in this, okay, which is America's proxies in this, while also simultaneously that he will engage in de facto recognition of all of the already conquered territory and give it to Russia. And even that is not enough. To me, I feel like that's the maximalist position. No demands being made for like Russian withdrawal from any territories whatsoever. And instead, saying all the places that you got, that's yours now. Have fun with that. While simultaneously, Russia is still turning around and saying, oh, but there are places we haven't actually militarily conquered yet, and we want those as well. It's insane. The calculation at this point is going to be helping Vladimir Putin come to a conclusion that the continuation of war will be too costly for him, as opposed to coming to terms with a ceasefire negotiation. And I don't even know if America has that power, especially outside of bringing China to the table, because the European side partnerships are insignificant. Okay, they are marginal. They are irrelevant in this conversation because they can't move without NATO. So either they disband NATO and then decide that they can also be in the crosshairs of Russia directly. No more Article 5, no more nuclear defense pact. So they can freely send Polish troops into Ukraine to defend Ukraine militarily, which is not going to happen, obviously. I don't think that that's going to happen. Or you bring China to the table as China of Russia, both politically and even sometimes economically, and put together a decent solution, a decent proposal, which will probably offer some goodies to China in the process as well, which, again, not likely to happen as well, because America's position on China is totally anti-China. You are insane if you think EU countries will leave NATO so they can declare war on Russia. Literally just insane. No, I'm not saying that that's going to happen. I know. I'm saying that it's just as, like, all of the options are insane. Do you understand? All of the options are unlikely, and all of the options are equally insane. They're not going to disband NATO so they can, like, declare war on Russia. They're not going to declare war on Russia while they have NATO, because then it's nuclear holocaust. They're not going to forcibly deport Ukrainian nationals, Ukrainian refugee men, to the front lines to make up for the lack of manpower that Ukraine is experiencing currently. Or they're not going to lower the age of conscription so that the next generation of Ukraine is completely wiped out in the process with no reasonable guarantees that they'll be able to successfully defend Ukraine from further Russian incursion. So the only peaceful outcome here is to try and bring China to the table to put together a proposal that is reasonable. That also is impossible, seemingly. That also is impossible. I'm just giving you what the most peaceful proposal, the most peaceful and meaningful solution that will be a permanent resolution and a permanent end to this conflict versus the other options. I guess the sleeper pick here, or the wild card, would be Turkey, which has a unique status of being a NATO country that happens to sometimes duke it out with other NATO countries. So maybe they'll just use the second largest military in the NATO coalition and use the Turkish military to defend Ukraine or something. But they have to make up for the lack of manpower. Either they make up for the lack of manpower by deportations of Ukrainian refugees, or by forcing Ukraine to lower the age of conscription, or by sending like actual military, actual foreign militaries into Ukraine. And you can't do that when you're in NATO, with the one exception of, I guess, the Turkish military, because of Turkey's like weird position. But even then, that would be a bridge that would just not happen, especially considering Turkey's proximity to Russia and Turkey's dealings with Russia as well as a regional power. So no, it's not going to happen. Of course, there is the idea that they wouldn't want to publicize too accurate maps and therefore offer intel to the enemy, but the RU army has advanced recently a lot.
As far as they can on the United States and on Trump, to say, please be aware of this when you go into your meeting with President Putin.
European nations, and you talk there about the ability of Ukraine to hold that line, to keep Russia out of that pocket of Donetsk.
Are you saying that people in Ukraine are not excited at the prospect of sending in the young, the old, and the weak to form a Volkssturm and defend the capital to the last person? Yeah. Seemingly, there's not a lot of appetite for that. There's not even a lot of appetite for the remaining people that are within the age of conscription to get forcibly sent to the front lines, which is precisely the reason why they have like these crazy bus stop kidnappings that are taking place in Ukraine right now. In Western Ukraine, if you're an able-bodied male that is draftable, you literally get captured by the police and forcibly sent to the front lines. I don't think that a lot of people like that, at least according to the Ukrainian shadows I have in this community. Seems like people understandably do not want that. Don't say false. I don't know why people say objectively true things are actually false. Okay? You should never be in a position where you point to something that is objectively true and say it's false and then claim it's like Russian propaganda or whatever. Because in that situation, all you're doing is like undermining your position. And you're saying that like truthful things are actually Russian propaganda. Why the fuck would you... It's like Israel defenders saying everything is blood libel. Like truthful things that you can literally see with your own two eyes that Israel is engaging in as blood libel. All of a sudden you've diluted the... How can you claim that is objectively true? I don't know. There's actual video evidence of it. Western media has reported on it. Ukrainians have talked about it personally. And last but not least, there's polling to show that 69% of Ukrainians want an end to the war. They want a ceasefire. How do we get here? I can't believe people still maintain this attitude. I don't know if it's because you were like, you operate in these circles that are propped up by the pro-NATO Ukraine allegiance that keep repeating like falsehoods or something. Of course they don't want to give up land and people. Of course they don't want that. It's totally understandable that they do not want that. They have every right to continue fighting if they choose to do so. That's not what I'm saying at all. Just had a comment with a Ukrainian plumber today, bus driver in London. He said he's 52 and just wants it to end even with a land grab, but his 82-year-old mother refuses to leave and will die for Ukraine. I think people with more years to lose are starting to see it also. Yeah. I think that there is an endless cycle of the pro-NATO coalition of like Ukrainians that still live in Ukraine that seemingly don't have to serve, and this is a part of their service, that present an alternative reality about what's going on. How do you square with the fact, which I agree with the fact, that America couldn't even sustain in Iraq? Russia is weaker. I agree. And I think that it's impossible for Russia to permanently annex any Ukrainian territory, especially ones that they have violently tried to conquer. Like, there's a difference between Crimea and Eastern Ukraine for that reason, okay? The Crimean annexation and occupation was nowhere near as bloody of an affair as what has unfolded since 2022. There are a lot of people that want to either return to their homes or want to fight back and have fought back. The problem is, we know how Russia deals with any sort of insurgency. Look at Chechnya, right? Look at Bucha. Like, when there is any sort of active insurgency, they will just mass slaughter people, okay? They just don't give up. It's terrifying. They do Israel shit, basically. So, even with all of that, though, I do think that there is active hostility that will continue, and it will be incredibly hard for Russia to maintain a permanent occupation in all of this territory. So, who knows? But I don't believe that they can keep going like this. But do you want to wait 10 years, or do you want an end to the active bloodshed now? That's the question.
Nations have enabled that in part through the aid they've given to Ukraine, and not just military aid, but aid across the board. And they've given so much now, they've surpassed the US in doing so. With that in mind, Michael, why does Europe struggle to get any seat at any negotiating table here?
Because ultimately, United States backing is critical to Ukraine. Ukraine wouldn't have lasted this long without the United States. And although it can fight on without any United...
Why would say they do Israel shit, but not they do America shit, as if Fallujah, Raqqa, Mosul haven't happened? Okay, fair. I say Russia does America shit all the time. People get really mad at me when I say that. I guess Israel is basically... saying they're doing Israel shit is basically redundant. Like, Israel shit is America shit. And I have long maintained the position that Russia does America shit as a negative, and a lot of people who love when America does America shit get really mad at me because they think I'm actually offering cover to Russia. This is where so much, for the record, if you want to know why there are so many out there who unironically run this like Hasan is pro-Russia narrative over and over again, that's where it stems from. Because since day one, I've been like, Russia is behaving like America here. This is completely unacceptable. And there are a lot of people who lose their minds and go, whataboutism, whataboutism? Why are you criticizing America when you should just be criticizing Russia? It's like, I am criticizing Russia. I'm saying Russia is doing the worst possible thing it could do, which is behave like a tyrannical, hegemonic superpower that dominates the entire planet. It's the worst thing that you can do. They get so goddamn mad when I say Russia does America shit.
States help in the future.
They get less mad when I say Russia does Israel shit, because they also, in their minds, feel like Israel is a separate entity and not an extension of America doing America shit.
It will be much harder. And remember, we talk about the US and Europe as if they're comparable groups, as it were, but the US is one country, and it's put in about $120 billion worth of aid, not the 350 that President Trump keeps talking about and quoting. I don't know where he gets that figure from. The real figure is 120 billion, and the Europeans have put in about 260 billion, but the European aid is only just ramped up in the last 18 months or so. And so the importance of the United States is that, without American high-tech weaponry, and particularly without American intelligence help, which has still flowed with one or two interruptions, but it still flows. Without that, then Ukraine would find it much more difficult to carry on. Not impossible, but much more difficult. And the fact is, you need the superpowers on your side if you're going to resist a power like Russia that's trying to destroy you as an independent country.
Using the hypothetical dice of influence, Michael, how many more rolls does Europe have left?
I'm sorry, how many?
How many more rolls of the dice of influence does Europe have left?
How many more rolls? Yeah, the rolls of the dice. Well, this is the last good one, but I don't think this will be the end of a process. I mean, what happens in Anchorage, I'm sure, will be the beginning of another process of further discussions, further technicalities before a ceasefire might be called. We don't know. President Trump might suddenly turn really tough on President Putin, but it doesn't look as if he's about to do that. On the basis of what's happened so far, this will just carry on for a bit, and the Europeans will still have a voice to be heard. But this is a really important juncture because things could go badly wrong after this meeting. If it really doesn't go well for Ukraine, things could get worse much more quickly. If it's not the worst outcome, then the Europeans will have a couple more rolls of the dice, but this is the best last hope, the best hope, in the present period, in 2025 to 2026, in which they could have their voices understood by the Trump administration in Washington? Not just heard, they get heard, but are they understood by the...
I think U.S. NATO policy in Europe is somewhat justifiable in comparison to what it does in the Middle East and Southeast Asia, where it goes batshit crazy. I mean, it's doing NATO-style shit in the Middle East as well. It's just doing it to Saudi Arabia, which is then in turn doing the batshit crazy violence. It's not that different. Actually, that's not true. Saudi Arabia still at this stage has more sovereignty than the servile state that you see from European nations. But the NATO policy has never been justifiable because NATO is a incredibly important tool for American imperialism around the world. If you think that NATO hasn't done insane shit in Europe, in European capitals, the reason why you feel that way is because of successful messaging, because of the domineering nature of American hegemony. It's because European nation states that have gotten to the servile position post-World War II got there after decades and decades of American intervention. Look up Operation Gladio to find out more about what kind of direct interventions America engaged in European capitals, specifically to destroy any remains of trade unionist movements, socialist movements, communist movements in these countries, completely taking away their sovereignty. And ironically enough, I would go so far as to say, like, there were French politicians at a certain point in time that actively spoke out against NATO intervention. Are we in the crosshairs as a sovereign nation in Europe? Why are we becoming a nuclear cannon fodder for America's interests against the Cold War when we can have more normalized relationships with the USSR? So that's another thing to also consider. NATO has been an incredibly significant factor in American intervention in Europe, perhaps the most significant factor aside from the Marshall Plan, but those two things, I guess, work side by side. NATO is the reason why 800 military bases are treated as joint security cooperation agreements and not 800 different military invasions and occupations. You understand? If not NATO, could you see a necessity for an actual coalition hypothetically during invasions like this? Yeah, I do. I do. In the absence of NATO, I do. But who knows what the world would look like in the absence of NATO? Do you see what I mean? Because, like, without NATO intervention, you have a sovereign Europe post-World War II. And all of the communists and socialists are the real liberators in sovereign Europe post-World War II. They're a lot more popular. The relationship between the USSR and Western Europe, perhaps, in spite of Eurocentric attitudes, Euro-supremacist attitudes, would have probably been significantly better. And therefore, there would be no necessity for a militant pact against the growing wave of socialism. I don't even know if European capitals would be as anti-communist and anti-socialist as they are now. I don't even know if they would be as capitalist as they are now. I mean, look at Europe and European nations as opposed to the United States of America in terms of their views on even social democracy. Social democracy is still capitalist, right? But there would be no socialization initiatives in these countries if it wasn't for the USSR being a prevailing counterbalance against the endless money faucet that was coming from America. Europe got many benefits post-World War II and even pre-World War II, certainly, but post-World War II as a direct consequence of the hard work of socialists, trade unionists, communists. They were able to keep up these incredible programs, an expansive welfare state, as a direct consequence of the outside forces they were fearful of, because there was an alternative vision around the world, a specter that was haunting Europe. NATO was the way to completely destroy any kind of real, organic, socialist, anti-capitalist movement in any number of different European states. So I don't know what kind of formation they would have in this situation, because I don't know what Russia would look like in this situation. I don't know if the USSR would have continued.
people around Trump and the particular administration officials that are handling all of the background to this meeting?